After several months away from the helm and all of the schedules slated and an empty bracket yet to be filled, it is time. Let's get ready for football! Welcome back, all you gabbers. School is in, you guys. Well, not quite. But the season has started and the high school football's kicked off. We've got 2 more opening kickoffs to go. And we're about to have one this week. But the one we're here to talk about started last week. So many of you, I'm just grateful to be back. And I got a few things I got to address. I had one of you guys, well, of course, there's the usual suspect, Brad. Want to give a big gab out to Gab and his, to Brad and his family through their trying time. I hope you're doing good. You stayed in contact with me even to the point that you got me on Facebook. So I'm definitely coming back. My prayers are with you and your family, my friend. Thank you so much for all the support since day one. I thank you so much. And guys, please leave your prayers with Brad and his family. But I got to throw his comments in there. You know, he said about my show, UGA fans and podcasters already complaining. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to see how it works and how the new pieces fit into puzzles. But I trust my smart dog to get it worked out.
Stop the cap.
Ride or die with Kirby. I swear. Go Dogs. Penn State and Clemson go belly up. I don't know about Clemson, and I will tell you about that later. What's up with you, bro? Why did they get these comments mixed up? That's supposed to be the first one. Let's see. We going to see, my brother. That's why we play the game. I think someone's going to be eating crow.
Stop the cap.
No, we going to be eating dog. That's what we're going to be eating.
It's not funny, Ed.
First of all, preseason polls don't mean nothing. Absolutely. I agree with that. But I take exception with that a little bit, Brad, because people make these first polls and they really haven't seen them play any. And you've got teams out there that they're going off of potential. LSU, to me, is overrated big time. Because, one, you got a ton of transfers. I think somewhere between 60% of their entire starting lineup is going to be going to be based in transfers. I mean, you don't know how these guys are going to fit or if they are going to fit. So with that, I totally agree with that aspect of it because you've got Florida ranked up there. Florida's got I don't even want to talk about that one. Because you basically saying that DJ is going to be that guy. Based on what? Everybody knows the season is different each year. He rocks. Yeah, Indy. Hey, listen. Yeah, I know Indy beat y'all, but what happened to Indy? What happened to Indy too? Hey, listen. You know, we didn't have the if Jeremiah Smith gets hurt like Marvin Harrison did. Jackson Smith and Jigba did, and Jameson Williams, and John Mechie did. Oh, we won that game last year. We didn't have a receiver for Ohio State get hurt last year.
Bruh.
But y'all did. I think Ohio State should be one. Well, see, always hating on my dogs. No, I can't hate. No, always telling the truth on them dogs. You know, I don't think Ohio State should be number one because I think some analysts are finally starting. I was listening to somebody on NBC that works for NBC, but he has his own personal podcast. But he was saying the same thing I was saying. Ohio State's offensive line was pretty good last year, but they lost both their tackles, and if I recall correctly, a guard or two. And they've got a lot of young guys coming back. And then you got to think, okay, brand new quarterback. Granted, he's a 5-star, but he's never taken a snap.
What?
Why don't you explain it to me?
And question marks at the running back position.
Is that your best?
Now, you do have Jeremiah Smith at the wideout position. As we said, you got Cardell Tate at the other wideout. And then you've got, of course, arguably the best safety in college football, possibly best defensive player in Caleb Downs. But truly, you have to look along the lines of what they have coming back realistically. And I think the problem is too many people are saying that Ohio State's going to reload. I hadn't seen it. Now, they may be competitive in the Big Ten, but I'm not going to even sit there and say they're going to win it. I can't do that. At the end of the day, Will Howard was somewhat pedestrian in a lot of what he did, but we don't know what the Ohio State Buckeyes have at the quarterback position, and ultimately, everybody in the country is kind of in the same position. We're just kind of wondering what this football team is going to have in store. And then, if I recall correctly, they lost several of their coordinators in this exchange of power. And what people need to realize is coordinators have a large influence on what these players do on the field. And the truth of the matter is, when you start looking at what Ohio State was able to do last year defensively, now a lot of those guys are in the NFL, and that can't be stressed any more than it already has been. These guys are in the National Football League. They are straight ballers. And when you sit and you say to yourself, okay, this is easy to replace this guy, or this guy was not all that, or whatever you want to say, you can make that kind of statement, but the truth is always going to come up from the bottom. And while so many want to say that it doesn't matter, the proof is in the pudding. So I'm not going to go off on the limb and say that I believe that I wanted to do my rankings, but that show got deleted. So guys, I'm sorry I could not do that. If I can get it done, I will. But as I said before, my belief in Ohio State Buckeyes, I think they'll be in the mix. I believe this is going to be the year, and I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I believe this is the year they get off the schneid against Michigan. You heard me. I think this is the time they finally get off the schneid against the Michigan Wolverines. Just saying. But let us get into the schedule for week 1. Now, we'll go through it, and as I said, we'll talk about it. And, well, they call it week 0, but, let's go ahead and throw it out there what it is. You got, well, they're calling this week 1. My mistake, ladies and gentlemen. We've got, we've got Thursday night, we've got number 25 Boise State against South Florida. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'm picking South Florida to upset Boise State because looking at Ashton Jeanty in the NFL, if they ain't got no replica, I don't see Boise State being that big of a threat this year. You agree, disagree with me? Let me know in the comments. Brad, I know you got a comment on that. Really, Thursday night, there's nothing else. Missouri plays Central Arkansas. That's really about it. Then you move, let's see. You've got maybe Wisconsin and Miami of Ohio. Then you've got Nebraska against Cincinnati. I think that's going to be an interesting game. ESPN will be covering that game. So that's going to be an interesting football game to watch. So just keep an eye out for that one. Then we move to Friday, where we will see the high-powered offense of Illinois, number 12, facing off against Western Illinois. And then we've got a game on Fox Friday night between Baylor and Auburn. And then we have an 8 o'clock game between Georgia Tech and Deion's Colorado, which I'm here to tell all of you, Deion will be gone from Colorado because the reality of it is, what else does he have? I'm going to enjoy watching Georgia Tech put that thing down.
My foot up your ass, you dumb mother. Say it.
Then we move to Saturday. We've got Texas at Ohio State. Then you've got Syracuse at Tennessee. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go on the record. This game is at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Don't be surprised if Syracuse pulls the upset here, because Tennessee's offense is sus with, of course, the moving on of Nico Iamaleava. So, yeah, I see Tennessee defense being good, but I think with new Syracuse quarterback Steve Angeli, former Irish guy, he's going to show up there and he's going to put this offense on his back and he's going to do his thing. He's going to show why, me personally, I felt like Angeli should have been the guy. Then you look at a game, which this is a game that could have a lot of eyes on it, but I don't see why. Number 8, Alabama against unranked Florida State. I think this is going to be a game that everybody's going to be looking at because they think Florida State's going to bounce back. And everybody's going to be paying attention to Kalen DeBoer, wanting to know if this guy's going to be capable of doing what he does. Me personally, I'm of the attitude that I think Alabama comes out of this game with the win, but they're still going to have questions. Now, I'm not saying, that it's not easy to win. It's easy to win in Tallahassee. It's not. But the reality of it is Florida State, Mike Norvell, these guys are struggling to get the type of recruits. They're still struggling from that year that they felt like they got, overlooked for the 14 college football playoffs. So, and it's been a downward spiral from there. But I still think Alabama should handle this. But if Alabama can't handle this game, all this talk about Alabama being in the college football playoff conversation, there's questions that need to be answered. So the first question they can answer is Florida State relevant or are they back? And looking down the schedule, there's really nothing else to talk about. But then you get to the knockdown drag out of the evening, which is the 7:30 matchup on ABC. That is basically the LSU Tigers facing off and going into Death Valley Jr. First of all, before we get into this game, I'm going to say it just like this. Brian Kelly, just stop. Just please stop, because all you're doing is embarrassing yourself. You keep giving teams like Clemson who don't need any more motivation. They really do not. The beatdown they took in the first round of the college football playoff last season after they started off really slow was enough. But I'm going to get into that as we get into the beginning of this week 1, which many of you are waiting my stake on the Texas Longhorns and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, the interesting part about this is going to be a game where I'm watching Arch Manning and Julian Sand. Now, the reality of it is Arch Manning is the prodigy, and many people know this, but the truth of the matter is this defense for Texas is going to be the real deal. They have arguably one of the best rosters in college football next to the Clemson Tigers coming back. Now, here's where it gets truly interesting from the standpoint of both teams. Now, the Texas Longhorns, along with the Ohio State Buckeyes, have issues in the offensive line. And the reason for that is because their best players went bye-byes. All their starters went bye-byes. And where you look at the strength of this team is going to be at the running backs. You've got Wisner. You got Wisner that's returning. And the reality of it is when you talk about a team that has guys that are coming back, you really have to start looking at the offensive line, number one. And when I look at this team and I say, okay, offensive line has issues, but then I also look at the Ohio State side and I don't see a lot of guys returning on that side of the ball. Now, they do have guys that are big prospects, that are guys that could possibly, turn into something. But this right here is a game, in my opinion, where the battle of the trenches is going to be huge. I don't see either team that's going to dominate the trenches. I see it's going to be a team of mistakes in the trenches. And a lot of people are taking Ohio State because because they look at Jeremiah Smith. But then again, you also got to look at this roster top to bottom. And right now, when you look at the way Ohio State is built, it's not built as a team that can compete right now. This is going to be a defensive struggle. You're going to see a lot of defensive struggles in week one between powerhouses. You know, the games that we have, the trio, if you will, as well as the trio and the dessert, you're going to see a lot of defensive squabbles. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think Ohio State's defense stands up. And as much as you want to say the horseshoe is going to be huge, I don't know if Ohio State's going to be able to run the football. Now, I will say this: Do I think that horseshoe makes a huge difference as far as Arch Manning getting his really a start at a hostile environment? Absolutely. They don't have the offensive line, which is why when people say, "Oh, national championship," I'm like,
is this a hypothetical question?
This offensive line ain't going to be able to hold up to the likes of a Clemson front four, or if Alabama's front line is as good as they say they are, or even a Notre Dame pass rush.
You some bitch.
You know, I had to stick that in there. No Georgia. Georgia ain't shown that their front seven's as dominant as it once was. Sorry. And I can't even throw Penn State in there. But I will say this. I do think this year is the year that Ohio State better look out for Penn State. Just saying. However, I still think Texas is going to make enough plays in this game in the horseshoe, make some mistakes early on here, maybe force a few balls into Cardale Tate or maybe Jeremiah Smith, and it turns into a situation where the Texas Longhorns just have to not make mistakes, and Arch Manning can just manage this game. And as long as the offensive line, this new offensive line Texas has, can keep him upright, and Arch Manning minimizes mistakes, I think Wisner's going to be able to do what he does. Because right now, like I said, the two issues that Ohio State's going to have, not just at the quarterback position, but in the trenches on both sides of the ball. What are they going to be able to bring? Are they going to be able to slow down this? Are they going to be able to cause issues with this young Texas front? However, this Texas front ain't young. They ain't young. So with that being said, I'm taking Texas, even though this game is in the horseshoe. I think Texas's defense is one of those defenses that's going to keep this game close. I think it's going to be a situation where Ohio State is breaking in a new line, even though they're at home, but it's one of the best defensive fronts that they're going to face all year. So with that said, I am going to take the Texas Longhorns. And it's not by much, so I don't want any Ohio State Buckeye fans like you, Nate, thinking that I'm just hating and this, that, and other. It's not a hate. This is the fact that you guys lost a ton. And to actually come out there and try to be on top of your A game this early would be absolutely unrealistic and unreasonable. And I'm not even going to talk about the Alabama-Florida State game. I don't even know why this is getting any traction. I spoke about this earlier. They called it one of the big three. I'm like, yeah. And then for me, I'm gonna be watching everything because it's my first year. My wife is gonna be out doing her thing. I love her to death. And you need a break, baby. I love you. But then we got the 7:30, which will probably be my wife will be back doing homework then. And if you guys are like me, you love the night games. You want those night games to be crunchy and just absolutely munchy. And I think this one's gonna be that way in the first half. I said it. I think LSU's going to get run out of the building. I really do. I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to do everything he can. Yes, I think the LSU line is going to have problems. I think they're going to have a large assortment of problems. They're not going to be able to get the ball to these weapons. I don't think LSU, and I think their problem's going to be is Clemson's not going to let them run the ball. And that's going to create situations where Garrett Nussmeier is actually out there trying to do it himself. A lot of problems he had last year, he was pushing it. He was trying to push that thing down the field. And it didn't work out. You know, and then that's just one of those where it's like,
Game over.
So I'm looking at it from the standpoint, you got Cade Klubnik, who is already on the Heisman watch. He's got two of his main guns coming back, and most of that O-line. Now, I heard through the grapevine one of his guys was banged up at the guard position, but I'm not worried about that. I think Clemson is probably the most complete team this year, because when you look at Penn State doesn't have any of its wide receivers or tight ends that were of significance returning. They do have their running backs, which is what Clemson doesn't have. However, I get it. Penn State's going to run the ball down your throat if they can. But see, here's the other thing. If I recall correctly, Penn State only has 2 offensive linemen coming back. Or is it 3? They don't have the whole entourage of linemen coming back. And with a team like Clemson, it's dangerous. But I know I'm going off on a tangent. But the way LSU is set up, they were set up like from the back end on up. They lost 2 or 3 of their guys to the NFL on that line. And what does Clemson bring to the party? A defensive edge guy, and a defensive interior guy that's probably going to go first round. Not what you want to see week 1 in Death Valley. Brian Kelly. You're about to lose your 5th straight opener. Now, for the other game that is on the agenda that everybody gonna be watching come Sunday, we call it Sunday Fun Day. Notre Dame, number 6 versus number 10 Miami in Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens, Florida. Now, everybody makes a big notion about what happened the last time Miami and Notre Dame faced off in South Florida. It was a beatdown. We get that. But the coach was none other than Mark Richt, the guy who brought a different culture there. Now we fast forward almost 8 years later, and it's Mario Cristobal. He's done some good things there, but is Carson Beck gonna be Cam Ward? The question is, can Carson Beck make things work with 6 brand new receivers from last year? And I'm referring to Miami's guys. Miami lost 6 wide receivers last season, and Restrepo was one of the most underrated guys in college football last year. And most of the guys that Miami has now, I think 3 or 4 of them are transfer guys. And then you look at the transfer. Miami got as many transfer guys, just about as many as LSU did. And we all understand that there's a lot of clicking that goes into this. But I will say this. Miami's got 2 things going for it. In the trenches, they are massive and they're experienced. Now, they weren't great last year. They were pretty good, but they weren't great. And now you're dealing with a situation where you're watching this football team possibly trying to replicate what Cam Ward and the Hurricanes from a year ago were able to do, except this time they're hoping they can make some tackles. And I'm not sure that this is realistic, or if it's even you can even expect this. And, you know, you got a Miami team who, like, as I said, is very good in the trenches on offense and defense, where you've got Notre Dame, who does have a few questions in its defensive interior. Exterior, no problems at all. But then you look at the offensive line for the Irish. Top notch. All of those guys go 6'5 plus, over 320 pounds. So you're not looking at, this is going to be a very agile group. And to the point that their best guy, Charles Jagasaw, was hurt early in the summer. And this guy is expected back late October, early November, possibly earlier than that. They say his rehab is going great. And his recovery is going great. So now you're talking about a situation where you had guys like Sullivan Apsher that were vying for this position, and these guys are going at it. they're not even juniors. They're young guys. And what people don't understand about Notre Dame is much like they're called tight end U, O-line U. And arguably so, after Jeremiah Love starts coming back with the stable of backs that they have, they may take over Georgia's title of running back U. Sorry, Brad. But here's where Miami is going to have to win this game. They're going to have to make freshman quarterback C.J. Carr, who was named the starter, over Kenny Minchey. Miami's going to have to make Notre Dame's offense one-dimensional, and they're going to have to make sure Carson Beck is not throwing into Notre Dame's dangerous secondary. There are going to be a lot. Listen, Notre Dame's got one of the, if not the best secondary in the country. People can sit there and say what they want about Alabama. They can say what they want about Clemson. The fact is, Notre Dame arguably lost one player in that secondary last year. And their safeties are big. You're not going to be able to beat these guys very rarely over the top. These guys are rangy, they're fast, and they play in your face. The truth of the matter is, if you're going to beat this football team, and I'm referring to Miami, you're going to have to make some big plays in the run game. The only weakness on this defense is going to be the defensive interior. And that's not saying a lot, even though you've got guys that are going to be full-time starters for the first time on that defensive interior. That is saying a lot. However, Notre Dame has some very fast, athletic, hard-hitting linebackers. So I would imagine that Marcus Freeman may want to dial up a few things, maybe decide whether or not what Marcus Freeman and Chris Ash decide to do, because, you could go and play a lot of man, but the rumor is that Ash is probably going to go right around 50-50 when it comes to playing man coverage. But ultimately, this is going to be the most exciting game of the weekend. There are people that are thinking about, have thoughts of Miami back in 2017 when the Irish had high hopes. So many people are thinking maybe this can go this way. Does this end the season for either of these teams? It depends on how close this game is. If this game is close, I don't think it finishes the season for either one. But I do think Miami needs this game much more than the Irish do, because ultimately, if the Miami Hurricanes don't win this game, this is going to be a situation where the Canes not only have to be in the ACC championship game, but, you look at this schedule and it's not very demanding. I think that Florida game is a little bit overrated, and then you've got Florida State back-to-back, and then you got Stanford, then you go to SMU. Now, that's going to be a catalyst if Kevin Jennings can do that magic he had last year. You don't have Clemson until the ACC title game. Syracuse could be a question mark because it depends on how well Steve Angeli and that offense get to clicking. NC State, there are no expectations. There were expectations last year. They flopped. This could be a surprise team. Virginia Tech, always a tough game when you go to Blacksburg. And, of course, Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh to close the season could be damaging. But ultimately, if they could pull the win against Notre Dame, this would be huge. But I don't see why that's going to happen. Notre Dame, on the other hand, same difference. They do have A&M in South Bend after a bye week. After this game, they have a bye week, and then the following Saturday they face off they have that showdown against the Aggies. But ultimately, what's got to happen for the Irish is they got to split one of these. Ultimately, you want to get this one. And hopefully your fans in South Bend, which we know they will show up and show out and shut down that Texas A&M and that young offense. So, but let me know what you guys think about week one. I know it was a little scatterbrain here and there, but guys, I am getting back in the groove of college football. We are back. I got a few more shows to put out there for you guys. But once again, I had to show my love, let you guys know I am still a hardcore Irish guy, even though I love all the college football. I just had to put that in there since we are the show for the week. But leave your comments down below. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the show. As I said before, I appreciate all the love and support that you guys have given me since our time away. Hope you guys are doing great. Just want to, as I said, give my deepest, sincerest condolences to my buddy Brad and the things that his family's going through. I also want to give a big gab out to one of my favorite actors who passed away last week, the great Terrence Stamp, who portrayed the original General Zod in Superman 2 of the 1978. One of my favorite phrases he made was "Kneel before Zod." I still use that when people are incorrect and I beat them in debates. So make sure you also visit the website, which is where Brad called me out today. Thank you so much for being over there, Brad, at Gridiron Gab Triple Option, as well as going to the Facebook page, Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Finally, make sure that you go over to the my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo, so you can catch up on what you can catch up with me on my other shows, as well as all the other shenanigans of the fall in season of Pigskin that is now underway. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.